Alright, let's talk about some yoga shit. Shite. Let's get right into the shite. Number one is called the ujjayi breath. Kind of sounds like that wind going through a cave sound. I'm pretty dehydrated right now. I don't have a lot of moisture in my up in my skull, my nasal cavity. So I don't know how well you're gonna be able to hear this, but I'll try it. Basically, it's just it doesn't need to be super audible. Like, it's not about effort. It's more about as with everything, it's more about the feeling. So I mean, the more you feel it, it is going to be fairly loud. But you don't need to try to make it loud. Yeah, so something like that. Mine's usually pretty loud, but yeah, I'm too dehydrated right now for various reasons. Yeah. And that breath is something you want to use just to restore balance, to get out of the mind and more into the body. Whenever you're doing your stretches, asanas, doing your yoga practice, you want to utilize this breath, get out of the mind, and just flow with the body, with the breath, and be completely in the breath as much as you can. Bring your focus to that. Now we're going to talk about some locks, some bandhas. The first one is the root lock. And there's a couple different muscles you'll feel when you're first getting into it. And this is just going to be kind of a basic overview. Whenever you first are getting into it, it's kind of gonna be like that feeling whenever you stop, like midstream, whenever you're urinating. It's gonna be like that, or the taint. So basically, you're kind of gonna be activating all of those with that lock, and it's kind of like an upward suction going on that's gonna lead into the other locks going up the body. But as you get into it, you'll be able to feel the isolation of the different muscles. But obviously, don't focus on that initially. Just try to focus on bringing all of the muscles that you can feel tightening up. And then also, the more you get used to doing this, the easier it'll be just to kind of naturally go into it. Especially like whenever a lot of people will do their entire yoga practice engaging that lock, and that just kind of helps to stabilize the energy, keep it from anything from leaking out. Also really engages the core. And that one is the Mula Bandha, the root lock. So yeah, basically, like, feel the taint, like the sex organ muscle tightening, and then you also feel like right above your like pubic area, your pubis, you'll feel that tightening as well. And then that will lead into the abdominal lock. The Uddiyana Bandha, which kind of looks like breathe in, breathe out, and then a lot of times when we say breathe out all the way, we don't really breathe out all the way. We're not used to breathing out all the way, so you want to have that extra little cough. And then suck, engage. When you're beginning, just focus on like, you know, sucking inwards. And then the more you do this, you'll feel like also a pushing along with the upward sucking. Like it's kind of balances after a while, after you get used to it. And that's with everything. Like experiment with it. Find out what works for you. Even more so than researching something. Like you are your own experiment. So like use your body, experiment with it. There is no wrong here. Like you'll read about all the right ways to do things, but I mean that's all subjective and dependent upon what you deem right or wrong, because there is no right or wrong. There's just experience. But some of that rolling stuff you can do with your abs, Nauli Kriya. So that kind of looks like inhale, exhale. I'm not super good at it. I haven't done it all that much. But basically just while you have that bandha locked, you engage your abs and you can do a lot of different things. Once again, experiment. Find out for yourself what you can do, what feels right. But there's many different ways to go about doing this. You can be seated, you can be standing, you can be bent over, like that. You can do it. Basically, like you can just use your hip bones here. And press on those, however you want to do it. And like, okay, what's the point, you know, of doing all these things? Like, yeah, it may look cool or whatever, but what are the benefits? What do you get out of it? Well, do it and see what you get out of it. But all I can talk about is you know, my experience with it, and it seems to really tone the abs. It helps you with that, and we'll get into these chakras, these mysterious chakras, with that energy center of the abdomen, which has to do with basically digestion, but also like digesting life, how we are able to digest and assimilate life. So this will help with this, not just physical, but as we do these things, and this is when we experience this as within, so without, as we do these things and cultivate a deeper practice and understanding, then we can witness our so-called outer experience reflecting that inner work, and that can look like a lot of different things. Basically, it's going to be like you'll notice a balance. You'll notice whenever you are more in tune with your inner nature, and you become very balanced inside with, say, emotions, feelings, having all that locked down and more in control. You're less reactionary, and you more observe things. And when you have that as your inner state, then things on the outside, even if you're presented with something occasionally that may trigger you or kind of cause a little irritation, like this cultivation of all these things with yoga or pranayama or working with the bandhas, it's going to directly translate to how you deal with stuff. And this is the point. Becoming balanced inside so that no matter what you're presented with on the outside, it's you decide how you want to respond or not, or just witness. You become very much less reactionary, which seems to be the go-to mode with most people, is to react and be drama queens, drama mamas. And then we got the Jalandhar, the throat lock. And basically how this goes down is kind of like as you do the other locks and work your way up, you'll feel that throat lock. You can kind of see it. And this is basically all the throat lock is. Basically, we need to simplify stuff, keep it simple, keep it stupid simple, so that we can better understand it, because the understanding comes in the feeling more than in this little mental games that we play, reactionary games. So you're going to feel that, like, and then you'll see most people do this, and that's kind of secondary. Like, more so, you can engage that lock without even putting your chin to your chest or downwards. Like, engaging that lock is, and then your chin will just kind of naturally, the more intense it gets, it'll just kind of naturally close. But first, just feel it, feel closing it, get used to it, and then these locks also play into how well, how much oxygen you're getting into your system. Because at first, whenever you're discovering these things, they're going to be intense, and you're going to experience things in the body that you're not used to feeling, because you're not used to locking certain parts of the body and engaging those energy centers. So a lot of times when people do these locks, like, very deeply, they'll have like a cough reaction happen, and that's just part of the initial stuff that goes on with it. And then the mala, so the maha, my bad, the maha bandha is when you engage all of these, all of the locks. That will look Horse stance for the win. Something like this. And then when you're doing these locks, especially like the throat lock or engaging in the maha, you close your eyes and then, you know, if you're experienced with this at all, like it'll be a little bit more natural to focus your energy, focus these two eyes upwards. You could say into the third eye, into your forehead, basically creating that triangle. And then you'll really engage your pineal, and then also the skull, the shining skull technique. And after you've been doing these breath locks for a while, you'll notice that you can hold them for a lot longer, with a lot more ease. And then that's when you'll start to get deeper into a lot of the benefits, and experiencing them, feeling them. So what I recommend whenever someone wants to go a little bit deeper with these things is combining them with the Wim Hof method. That can get really powerful and is very beneficial. And I've had some very awesome meditations doing this as well. And yeah, I'll go ahead and jump into meditation. I notice a lot of people, I won't say bash, but they say, well, we can't just meditate all day. Like, what does that do? That doesn't accomplish anything. Like, we can't just meditate in a cave all day. I mean, sure you can, but in saying that, you're also saying you're hinting at the level of your understanding of what meditation is. Because it can be a limitless amount of things. We can meditate upon anything, because it's just where we put our focus. So when you're seeing someone meditate, you can't just assume that you know what they are doing. Like, you can't just assume that they are just right there with their body, because if they know what meditation is, then most likely they're not just right there with their body. They are either using their astral body to go somewhere else, or they are using their dreamscape to experience anything. And whenever we do that, we can kind of do like a deep training of the mind with different dreamscapes and levels of accessing those different layers. So what I find interesting when I allow the dream to play out is doing things like people like to call it like inception or whatever, like the dream within a dream within a dream. But what this looks like, it can look like many different things. My latest one was, and this is another thing, is like, you know, people tell you what you can and can't do within a dream. That's all bullshit. You can do anything in a dream. There's no you can't do this. There's none of that. And if you subscribe to that, or if you hear that and want to believe it, like, believe what you want. That's your choice. Everyone has a choice to believe what they want. But always ask the question if you're limiting yourself with your beliefs. Because whenever you say you can or can't do something, whenever you say you can't do something, you're the one holding yourself back. You've made the decision that you can't do it without trying. Because, I mean, it's all about experience and finding out for yourself. This is what I mean when I say, direct experience, finding out for yourself. But so yeah, like in my dream, one of my latest ones, I became a little bit more lucid. The dream was vivid, and I was reading, like, just just like waking life, whatever that is. I was reading this book, and this is also the power of the dreams. It's all about the dream language, which is the language of imagery, and this is the most powerful stuff with meditation. Is you disengage how you think, because we're so used to thinking and we're taught to think with words. But whenever you get into very deep meditations, you don't think with words anymore. And this is kind of what you want to work up on cultivating. By cultivating, just keep practicing it. That's all cultivation is. Just keep at it. So in deeper meditations, you will still be engaging the mind, but it will be a language of imagery. You'll be speaking through dream, and not in words. And once you really get into this a little bit deeper, you'll notice that whenever you do engage with the words, it draws you away from this dream language, imagery language. You'll have direct experience and notice how every time you try to attach a word to some of these images, you'll notice your energy level depleting going into these words. And as your energy level depletes, you have less energy to engage with this imagery language. It draws you out of that state. Okay, so yeah, with that dream, as I was reading, I was using my imagination with the dream. So as I was reading inside of the dream, what I was imagining while I was reading, that was becoming another dream. Like with that inception, dream within a dream. I was reading, going within that. Then I've also had many layers. Like, it was almost like a game. I think I may have been like chasing someone, or just playing tag or something, going within a dream, within another dream, within another layer. You can just kind of play around with it. But there's many different things that you can do with meditation. It doesn't have to. Meditation is just a word, but it's a word that covers like such a vast array of different things that you can do while you meditate. Where do you want to put your focus on? Okay, back to some yoga stuff, some pranayama. This is the alternate nostril breathing, nadi shodhana. And it looks like taking your hand and basically just closing off one nostril, breathing in or out and then in, switching nostrils, out, in, switching nostrils, and you can do this various ways. You'll see a lot of different people use different fingers. I recommend just do you with everything. Do what feels comfortable. What I prefer to do is use my thumb and ring finger, whatever you want to call that, and then using my index finger and middle finger and just having that at my third eye center and using these. And then you can also utilize the ujjayi breath with that and get deeper into it. And what does this do? Well, what's the reason I'm doing this? Well, try it and find out. It can help with headaches. It can help with basically just rebalancing Ida and Pingala, rebalancing your brain. But what you can also do is experiment, and as you get a little bit more control of your breath, a little bit more experience, cultivation, practice, and you keep it up. You can actually do that alternate nostril breathing without using your hand, just by using your mind and focusing. I remember the first time that I heard my yoga teacher say that before we practiced it. I was like, okay, and then we practiced it, and I was like, okay, wow, that was actually very simple, and it surprised me how easy it was just by focusing on that and using the power of your mind to just focus on one nostril and then the other. It's kind of a nice thing to experience and realizing like what we can do when we focus on it, because we can do a lot of fucking shit, but we've gotten too used to being, I don't want to use the word lazy, but that's what it is. Getting comfortable with the stagnation, that's something that we gotta break free of. And this pranayama will help with that, clearing out the stagnation in the body, bringing the prana in, getting it moving around. Okay, then also I want to talk about retention, like that, the bandhas, but then also what I like to do with that, and also in my yoga practices, is the opposite of that. Because I mean, we should seek balance, but in engaging in the two extremes, oftentimes we can engage in those extremes and then let go and then witness how the body will just naturally find that homeostasis, that it'll just naturally find that balance. And the more we witness this, the easier it will become, the easier it will be for us just to exist there, to come back there whenever we find ourselves out of that balance for whatever reason. So basically it's going to look like bringing the breath in fully. And it's good whenever you practice this to have a lot of prana built up, a lot of breath, a lot of oxygen. So if you want to do some Wim Hof or some just fast breathing, build that up. And then take a full breath in and hold and squeeze all of your body as much as you can, everywhere. And it's going to look like basically just like a pushing out of the abdomen. I guess you kind of also can engage the root bandha, but before you just go right into it, you definitely want to make sure that your body's ready for it, so that you don't pass out or whatever. And if you are just beginning, maybe just practice it whenever you're in like a lotus position or just sitting. Because if you're not used to it, your body's not going to be used to that pressure, and yeah, you'll probably pass out or just about pass out and go through some weird shit. But so you can do that outward. And then whenever I do that, I don't know, it's just natural for me to kind of look up to the third eye and send energy there. And the more you practice that, the longer you'll be able to hold it. Right now, I can't hold it too long, evidently. But going right out of that, right into doing some of the bandhas. So it's like the in-breath, fully hold, squeeze, like get that blood pressurized everywhere. And then do the exhale all the way, lock it up, bandhas. Horse stance! I don't have a lot of, okay. And that's pretty powerful stuff. What's the purpose of all this? Well, the pressure in the body and in the skull, it's gonna show you pretty quickly where you're leaking energy, where you're leaking prana pressure. And so engaging these locks, doing both the extremes, all the way in, all the way in, breathing all the way in, pressurizing, squeezing, and then the outward, the locks. It's going to, it's kind of like a muscle. I mean, you're engaging all your muscles here, but it's kind of like you're helping reshape, retone your core here, not just your like your core of your abdomen, like the core of your body, the core of your energy system. So it's helping with energy management, which is huge in anything and everything, especially if you want to do a lot of more physical activities. I would recommend doing Tai Chi. Whenever I do yoga anymore nowadays, it's more of like a mix of yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, and then it just depends on if I want to go more inward or more outward, more physical, like exertion. Then I'll do some working out type stuff, kickboxing stuff, which that's kind of all I do. I have like a kickboxing class I do once a week, and then it's called Yoga Sculpt, and that's definitely something that people should look into, no matter what kind of a level of athlete or whatever you're at. Like Yoga Sculpt is pretty amazing. You can use all kinds of different props, weights, the bands, yoga blocks or balls. But it's basically like a cardio class with asanas involved, and then like light weight training. But then also the beauty of Yoga Sculpt is engaging different muscle groups and going from one muscle group and then kind of like having an active rest, engaging another while you're still kind of engaging what you just worked out. So also something that I noticed with Yoga Sculpt, as well as just a lot of physical activity in general, is how quickly my body heals just from getting like a fresh supply of blood, oxygen-rich, prana-rich blood going to wherever the injury or the stagnation is. I'm always amazed because you kind of go into it maybe a little worried or a little apprehensive about, oh, I have this injury here. But if you get out of your damn mind, into the feeling, into the breath, you will bring energy into that place, and it will heal it. There's been so many times that I have some kind of a yoga sculpt or a kickboxing class, and I go into it with, you could say, an injury, a soreness or a tightness, and afterwards, because of the energy that has been supplied there, the oxygen, I don't have any pain anymore. And you could also say, it's to do with maybe some hormones or adrenaline, which probably does play a factor, but that's going to be more like short-term and temporary, because the pain will come back after those hormones rebalance. But that's whenever you realize the true healing, is when after you come down, you rebalance, and you realize, hey, there's no injury or no pain there anymore. So yeah, it's all about going into the feeling. It's more about quality than quantity, with breath, with meditation, with your awareness, with exercising. It's more about how you do something than going all out, going to the extreme. Which, I mean, I'm a fan of extremes. That's just how I've always been, I guess. You can call me crazy, and yeah, I guess I am a little crazy, but just because those extremes always remind me of truly being alive. It reminds me of my essence, even if it's like an extreme, like taking in a certain poison or something, or a certain chemical induced state, like an extreme one. I'm always very appreciative, maybe not during the hellish moment of the experience, but in the aftermath. I'm always very appreciative of what I've learned, what I've been reminded of. And that's also, like, anything I ever say or put up on here on YouTube or whatever, it's all just a reminder of what you already know inside. Maybe you have forgotten it, or have built up a layer of bullshit around the truth, which is going to lead us into the ego. What the fuck does that word mean? This is also something that we need to understand what it means, because we always hear people talk about the ego. Let go of your ego, man. You're so egotistical, man. What does that mean? I think well, that word, most people who use that word have no fucking idea what that means. Or they get it confused with persona or personality, which is not. We decide what words mean for us. So if you want something to mean something for you, then go for it. How I like to see the ego is kind of like a false perception. It's seeing yourself in kind of like a limited way, like from one perspective. You can say, like, being too caught in a loop program, or being too in the mind and not connected to your feelings. You could say you're less egotistical whenever you are connected with your feelings, with empathy, with the heart. What does that mean? Like, be connected with the heart, with your feelings, or with love. So I got a couple things here about the ego. We'll see how this shows up here. Aha! That's not going to work either. I'm just going to see if this will show up. Hopefully you can see that. The ego is a false perception of self. It's an idea, a transitory identity that we've picked up. What we've been told that we are, as opposed to what we feel that we are. The more the mind dominates, the more the ego comes into play, and the further people depart from their true inner self. So all the technological advances in the world mean nothing if people feel a spiritual void inside of them. Which is kind of also where the ego comes into play, to fill that void. But oftentimes what it searches for in filling the void are material things, or things that bring either instant gratification or just a temporary relief. I don't know if you can see this shit. Oh! How bizarre. I'll just read it. Shape-shifting requires the ability to transcend your attachments, in particular your ego attachments, to identity and who you are. If you can get over your attachment to labeling yourself and your cherishing of your identity, you can be virtually anybody. You can slip in and out of different shells, even different animal forms or deity forms. And you can experience this quite a bit with working with shamanic traditions, with the shape-shifting, with diving into the dream realm, the astral realm. Let's see what else we got here. This was showing up better. I'm just gonna read this stuff, even though my reading kind of sucks because it sounds so bleh, monotone. It's something I'm working on. Making these videos has really helped me break out of that shell of really disliking what I thought I sounded like, and then actually doing a video, doing something, actually listening to it, and realizing that, wow, there's no need to think the things that I thought about myself. Okay, so this is Awakening from Our False Self to Remember Our True Self. Julian Websdale. It's just like an article that was made. But it's been pretty good stuff. In early childhood, if something authentic or an essential quality or our true self is not acknowledged and mirrored back to us by our parents, we presume it is unimportant, so we repress it and develop ego structures that will help us cope with it. Yeah, that's true. Also, whenever you go deep into self-realization, doing your own healing work, you'll realize the traumas that have been there that we've suppressed, and this is kind of like a natural mechanism as well. Especially when we get initially caught up in allowing the trauma. Because once you get up to a point, you're not going to allow certain things inside in your like reality bubble, in your world. You're not going to allow trauma to happen because you regain power not to react, or if you do react, to do so in an empowered state from an empowered viewpoint. Psychospiritual development is about reversing that process, removing the blockages, bringing things into the light, and turning the repression into expression. Once again, with the blockages, there's many ways to deal with these blockages, to feel them. And a lot of the body work, the breath work, the bandhas, you'll realize that the more you feel the blockages, you may say physical, but those are just aspects, part of the complete blockage, which is mental and spiritual. And so this is more like the accessing the mental and the spiritual side of it, which is connected. you'll face both, because there isn't you have to. It's part of it. Realizing the connection between the emotional and physical, spiritual, whatever you want to call those things. Self-realization only becomes possible when sufficient psychological undoing has been completed, when our conditioning has been neutralized and our awareness has been purified, i.e. disidentified from exiles and ego structures. So yeah, realizing our programming, our conditioning, realizing the layers that we have built up, and then realizing that not only do we have to break down those layers to get to the true self, we have to always be vigilant and aware of not creating more of those layers, because it does very much become like an automated process. You don't even realize that you're doing it. It just happens until you become self-aware and realize that it's happening. But even then, there's always stages and levels, and you're going to go back and forth of being aware and then not being aware, going back into old patterns and behaviors. And the important thing is not to be too hard on yourself. Be aware, realize that you're doing it, and in that realization, allow that to empower you. That you should be empowered with that. You're being aware of it. That means that it doesn't control you anymore. That means that now you have a choice of what you want to do with that. Even though self-realization is an instant event, there are several stages leading up to it that can be used to gauge our progress and guide us into the next stage of our journey. She has like 6 stages here. Julian could be a guy. Stage 1 involves consciously noticing our thoughts, emotions, and body sensations, becoming the observer, becoming aware. Stage 2 involves realizing that these thoughts, emotions, and sensations are not us. I would say, this is also getting into the thing like, you are not your body. You are not this meat bag. I think that's a little bit misleading, and not really empowering you to inhabit more of your body. Yes, we are more than just the body, but we are also the body. It's very hard to describe some of these things that are beyond words. Our awareness, our spirit animates the body, and it's kind of like a lifelong process to merge the spiritual and physical through the mental, becoming aware of the connection and feeling it, becoming aware of the feeling and getting out of the head. You utilize the mental by observing, not by thinking about it, not by putting labels or words on it. Stage 3 involves realizing that we are the awareness that is noticing these things. Stage 4 involves developing a felt sense that we are this awareness. Stage 5 involves experientially knowing and feeling that we are pure awareness. Stage 6 involves experientially knowing and feeling that awareness, God, life, universe, is being us. Okay, and I want to show some pictures of this. Next, she talks about the labyrinth of our inner journey. Let's show some pictures here of this labyrinth. These things are very beneficial to look at, a lot like mandalas. They will have a mandala effect on your brain. And the more you get into meditating with mandalas, you'll realize you'll kind of be able to tap into this mandala language. It's the language of imagery. Mandala meditations are, they can get really trippy if you can kind of phase into that trance state and just allow your mind to completely go into the image. I have a nice little book of mandalas I'll bring in and show that off sometime, because I've had some awesome meditations with those. But yeah, it can get really trippy and become very like almost psychedelic looking. Okay, the labyrinth of our inner journey. Most of us are suffering from mistaken identity, taking ourselves to be someone we are not. You could call that the ego, or just a false sense of self, who we think we are, not so much attached to what we feel we are. The goal of psycho-spiritual development is to correct this mistaken identity, not to strengthen or improve our false identity. The self that we think we are does not exist. It is a figment of our imagination. The self that we think we are cannot awaken. We have to awaken from that false self in order to realize our true self. When this occurs, we realize that we have always been our true self. And this is also something whenever you can do some deep meditations, allowing yourself to become vulnerable. You will just kind of let go, allow, accept, witness, and feel. And this process will just kind of happen, and you'll feel your real self. And then you also feel what you've been doing to yourself, being coerced or going along with the rest of the world and engaging that false self, or if you want to call it an ego, engaging the ego self. Get my chair. Oi! See how this looks. That's good enough. Let's see. Our inner journey takes us through the labyrinth of our ego structures to discover our true self at the core of our being. A labyrinth differs from a maze in that it only has one path, which leads to the center. So the path is already mapped out for us. All we have to do is walk it. If we stop resisting and controlling, the flow of life will naturally carry us to our destination. This is kind of just like the allowance meditation. Letting go of everything, letting go of our minds, of our worries, and just experiencing the real, raw isness. Just being it. Not thinking about it, feeling. Some parts of the journey will be tough and others will be wonderful. But they will all be experiential opportunities for the reintegration, development, and liberation of our consciousness. The most effective way of journeying through the labyrinth of our ego structures is to do so with conscious awareness and presence, because then we can process the psychological material, i.e. dissolve the ego structures and reintegrate our consciousness as we encounter it. Yeah, and this is why it's important to cultivate the awareness, to continue with the practice, continue engaging that. Then, when we finally reach the core of our being and realize our true self, we can be confident that we will not relapse back into ego identification, because the ego will have largely been dissolved. And a lot of people do this and experience this who work with spirit medicines, entheogens, whatever you want to call it there. Strong chemical allies. You'll experience this dissolving of who you thought you were. The problem that can arise, though, is when we're not used to engaging that. We'll have this crazy experience. It can be beautiful, like amazing, totally beyond words, the most amazing experience of your life. And then, some amount of time later down the road, you'll be like, how did I get back here? I had that breakthrough, and yeah, I'm still going through this stuff. This is why. You will have that relapse whenever you have not cultivated, continuously engaged in this process. And yes, you can keep having these experiences, but you got to approach it in the right manner, the correct mind state with the correct intentions. Your desire needs to be there to realize why you're doing it, what you're learning from it, and realizing that it's just kind of like showing you what's already inside, no matter what you go through, how powerful the experience is, with or without spirit medicine. Because you can have more powerful experiences without these chemicals or plant medicines than with. But you have to learn from them if you decide to take them. You have to realize, like, this is within me. This is what these things are showing us. Like, it's all within us. It's just up to us if we're gonna engage that and dissolve our illusions. We have to do that. We have to take responsibility of that. Temporary self-realization is the result of jumping to the core of our being through intense will or intense aided allied experiences without dissolving the ego structures. This is what happens. If this occurs, it is only a matter of time before the lure of the ego pulls us back out again, because too many ego structures remain for the self-realization to be permanent. Our conditioning can cause us to remain misidentified with the ego self longer than necessary. So here are a few simple things that we can do to loosen our identification with our ego self. Don't take things personally. Let go of any definitions or concepts of yourself as a personal I, and see yourself as impersonal, pure awareness. Forgive everyone and everything. You can't change what has happened, so why hold on to the personal feeling of victimhood? These are important things and powerful. Forgive everyone, and most importantly, probably is to forgive yourself as well. You'll come to understand what that means more, what you're forgiving yourself for, the deeper you go in these practices, in this cultivation of awareness, of self-realization. And I'm saying all this kind of just as talking about my experiences, my understandings, definitely not coming from a place of I am enlightened, I am self-realized. If anything, I'm being selfish with this, because this is kind of for me, because I know that I need to see these things too, to help encourage me to continue with this. So even though I'm being selfish, I also hope that someone, if anyone sees this, that they gain something from this as well. If not just a nice reminder of what you already know. Be selfless. Put other people's needs ahead of your own and dedicate part of your life to serving or helping others. That's kind of a slippery slope and can be taken in the opposite way as well, because there is no others. You know, whenever you're helping yourself, you are helping others, because whenever you've helped yourself first, say in your process of identification of what you are, what they are, realizing that there's no separation there, like then you're going to be able to truly help others by realizing that they are you. Be authentic at all times. Don't put on different persona for different occasions. And all this stuff is easier said than done for sure, but it's just kind of things that you will, more than anything, these are things that you will notice happening as you progress in this stuff. Have fewer preferences and opinions, especially about things that don't really matter. Don't be so reactionary. Don't get caught up in the drama. Okay, and this last little part talks about like dualistic perception. Non-duality. Self-realization results in non-dualistic perception, a direct and intimate unity with everything we encounter. But what does it really mean? How does it work? Dualistic perception. The true self has forgotten who it really is and believes it is the false self, a conceptual self-image. So the false self stands between the true self and the objective reality. I'll show you this picture that they show. The false self perceives the object. Let's see if I can do this. The little duckies. Rubber ducky. How much can we see of this? Okay. The duckies. So the false self stands between the true self and objective reality, as depicted in this little figure. The false self perceives the object, and the true self believes it is the false self perceiving the object. So there is no direct perception. There is separation between the true self and the object, hence duality. Note, the false self doesn't actually do any perceiving, because it is just a thought form. It is more like a lens that the image passes through and often gets distorted by, on its way to being perceived by the true self. Non-dualistic perception. With the false self no longer present, the true self can perceive the object directly. There's nothing, no go-between, no in-between. There's nothing between the true self and the object. So the true self can intimately merge with the object to directly perceive every attribute. Hence unity or non-duality, realizing that there is no separation here. This is also something that we need to get out of, is the middleman, the go-between, the thing that tells us that it has the answers, that it is the one receiving the word of God. You are the word of God manifest. There's no go-between. You don't need any go-between. You don't need any intermediary between you and experiencing whatever you want to call it, the universe, the all that is, God. You have access as soon as you realize that you do. As soon as you let go of that attachment of thought forms, of putting labels on something, just having that experience, direct feeling. Okay, I'll talk about the chakras real bit. I kind of skipped that. I have a couple pictures here. Cool. The mysterious chakras. This is kind of like a Alex Gray type of. It probably is an Alex Gray, the one on the left there. Drawing and picture. Man, it's just so bright. Technical difficulties, that doesn't help. How bizarre! You can kind of see what I'm talking about. Catch my drift. See that? No. No, you cannot. Ah! You can see my reflection, but not the image still. Awesome! Well, before it was showing it really good. No longer is the case. Maybe I broke the cam. Probably. So it shows it until it doesn't. But there you can basically see the chakras and how they correspond to, it's basically the nervous system and the different energy centers in the spine and in the central nervous system. There they kind of link up to the spine and pineal gland and then the crown. This is a good one because you can see like the whatever you want to call it there, the groupings of the nerves. And if you ever take any classes or do any work like energy work, call it Reiki, this is what people are feeling or picking up on. Like, this is where the energy is coming from. It's being carried through our nervous system, and the clusters of nerves there are what you can feel the chakras. For the most part, there's definitely more centers and more little mini chakras, but the main ones here, this is what you're going to pick up on whenever you're feeling, say with your hands, or even seeing them if you want to go into that. It's another image there. So yeah, that's essentially the chakras, the energy centers. So I mean, each one of those directly relates to those nerves, those groupings, those clusters, which go into the nervous system, the organs, the endocrine system, like certain glands. So, say if your solar plexus chakra is, if someone is saying that you're weak in that chakra, or it's not spinning properly, basically you got poor digestion. The energy is stagnant there. So whenever we are hearing like that chakra is weak, that's where the energy is stagnant, and that has to do right back into physical health, but also like there's no separation here with the physical, the spiritual. It's all intermingled and interrelated in the body. So don't limit yourself by just thinking, I'm not the body. It's kind of like a half-truth there, because you're not just the body. But I would say part of most all of our processes here is re-inhabiting our body, all of our bodies, remembering. This is like where the remembrance comes in. Remembering what we can really do, remembering how much control we have, remembering what we really are. Self-empowering, realizing how powerful we are, but it's not just becoming powerful. It's not about power. It's more of like an ego thing or a false identification. It's remembering how to listen to what's already there. The more you listen, the better you'll become at it, and the louder, the stronger that feeling will be. Like the inner knowingness, the inner call. You can call it like a subtle or etheric construct that exists alongside the physical. So it doesn't become subtle anymore because you have become aware of the subtle, and you define it differently. It's more just a different quality of what you thought was already there, what you thought was there originally, but what is also there existing alongside it. The subtle energy, if you want to call it that. Remembering how to listen to this. And this pranayama, these locks, this breath retention, this Wim Hof, not only does it enliven and strengthen all of this stuff, also helps you to listen again. Listen through feeling. Not listening by thinking that we're listening by having mental constructs going on. Like, oh, okay, we're contemplating it, but no, you're caught in your loops. One of the major things is we've forgotten how to listen to what is all around us. We forgot how to read of the book of life that is all around us. And how you do that is you remember how to listen to it. You remember how to become aware of it. And then you see how it is all connected. You bear witness to how everything's communicating. Like, you just go out in nature and meditate. Meditate. Focus on listening. Become aware that everything is in communication with all the life is communicating with itself. And then the deeper you go into that, you'll realize you are a part of that. And you always are, but especially whenever you go out in nature. Like, you can really tap into some cool shit. Like, witnessing, listening to the sounds of the wind, the breeze, the birds, the insects, the frogs. And whenever you really tap into that and feel the connection, you're not thinking anymore, you're just feeling it. you can increase your heart rate in that state and witness the response that the nature will have. And that right there will tell you, let you know, help remind you of your connection with it. Well, I think that's it for now. This is a pretty long one, so we'll see how this came out, how this came along. Thank you.